Sometimes we don't need all the details. You need somebody to help you get through that. You might be a solopreneur in your business, but you're not alone in the world. If I hadn't done that and I said yes to this opportunity, it would have crippled our business.
You have added $24.4 million and you have grown your team from 30 to 250 plus. Like, how on earth did you grow that fast without burning it all down in the process?
There's a lot there to unpack. We're the ones who turned on the bomb. And of course, we have to figure out how to shut off the bomb, which we don't know how to do. But we need to keep speeding down the road in order to avoid the chaos, but live in the chaos.
John, hello.
Hello.
It's so great to be sitting in this room with you.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been a while. How long has it been?
I don't know, 3 years, 2?
It's got to be at least 3 years. Yeah, amazing, amazing. So thank you for saying yes to this interview.
Of course.
Okay, let's dive in. So let's start where this all began. Not with the numbers, but with the guy who once showed up to a second date, sunburnt and in serious pain.
Okay.
Can you tell that story, if you're willing to share that story?
Sure.
And also what it taught you about doing hard things, even when you're wildly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I was invited to go boating, and I have a skin condition. It's not actually a condition, but the sun doesn't agree with me. And I've known this my whole life. But so I show up, I was invited. Turns out the girl who invited me had also invited 2 other friends. So there's 4 of us. And then her brother showed up because we're boating and he has the boat. So we're out there. Now, at this point, I'm still an irresponsible college kid, but not completely unaware of the fact that I burn.
Sure.
So I didn't bring my own sunscreen, but I asked, I go, oh my gosh, do any of you have sunscreen that I could borrow? And one of the friends like, oh, sure, here you go. Great. So I lather up.
Well done. Taking care of yourself.
Responsible.
Like conscious, very responsible.
We get out on the boat. And I'm going to come back to the idea, like, I'm the only guy. And then she invited 2 other people. So my confidence is pretty high at this point.
Sure.
Like, oh, maybe, that's interesting.
What could happen here?
Right. So we're out during the day, we're out longer, and I don't actually love boating because I don't have a lot of experience with it.
Sure.
And I get burnt really easily. I reapplied the sunscreen 3 times during this experience. And then by about 3.5 hours, having been burnt many times, I know what the signs are. And I'm looking at my skin, I'm like, oh no.
Oh.
Like the burn test, I'm like, oh no. Like, this is bad.
Yeah.
I applied 3 times. Like, can I see that bottle real fast? I looked at it. Expired. I didn't even know sunscreen could expire.
I didn't know that either. I remember when you shared this story for the first time, I was like, what? This might be news for people listening too. So it had expired.
It had expired. Expired sunscreen turns into an accelerant as opposed to a sunblock.
What?
I might as well have been putting coconut oil all over my body.
No way.
And for someone who burnt, so it was bad. And I'm not like when you look at a palette of red color, like I was bright red. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the University of Utah. I was their color of school. Gosh. I had 2nd-degree burns on my shoulders.
Wow.
It was bad. And the best part is anytime I sat up, my fat rolls would hurt so bad because I was so sunburned. No. But so,
ouch.
Know, in Utah, there's some unwritten rules about, if a girl asks you or you ask a girl, and how do you express interest without being overly aggressive, saying like, hey, I'm interested.
Sure.
And so like there's a window. Okay. Like she invited me to an activity. And there's a window that if I don't ask her out during that window, then I'm basically saying I'm not that interested.
Oh my gosh. So here you are now completely sunburned, like 2nd-degree burns.
Yes.
And there's this window.
There's this window.
So what do you do?
I need to ask her out.
Okay.
So I ask her out.
Well done.
And say, hey, let's go to the movies.
Oh my gosh.
Pirates of the Caribbean 2 was the movie that we went to. And in hindsight, there's 2 things that I learned from her. One, she actually invited like 15 people.
To the movie?
to the boating
Oh, to the
activity.
boating activity. Okay.
I was not the only guy she invited. So
Oh.
she potentially wasn't interested anyways.
Wow.
So she invited other guys. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, that's interesting. And then she told me after the fact, like, it was the weirdest date I've ever been on. Because, not the boating, but the movie.
Okay. Okay.
So I go, because I pick her up.
Yes.
We go to the movies.
Yes.
And I showed her the sunburn so she could appreciate
Okay.
my
So
sacrifice.
you show up literally with second-degree burns and sunburn to that date. Okay. And then she said this was one of the weirdest dates.
After the fact.
Okay.
Because I picked her up, we went to the movies, and I dropped her off.
Yeah.
There was no dinner, there was no hanging out.
Oh, wow.
It was just like, there's a window, we need to go on it. Like, I need to let her know that I'm interested by asking her out again, but I cannot physically handle this pain very much longer.
Gosh,
Because,
that's crazy.
until it healed, I mean, I just laying on my back.
Wow.
Also, a couple other things I learned just for people for practical purposes.
Yes. Well,
if you have a sunburn, you can apply aloe vera too soon. Because I ended up doing that and it locked in the heat in my skin instead of letting it.
You're teaching me all kinds of things that I didn't know. Expired sun cream. I'm guessing people listening didn't know this either. And then if you apply aloe vera too soon,
it locks it in
Wonderful.
and makes the
Wow.
sunburn worse.
well, I'm guessing you applied it as soon as you could. So that had happened
Exactly.
as well. How on earth did you sit through Pirates of the Caribbean 2? I mean, that just
I
must
don't
have
know.
been like
Yeah,
horrible.
like a rope. I was just like as stiff
Horrible.
as possible. Like,
Wow. And then I know listeners are asking this question. So second date, you'd hit the window, tick.
Yeah.
Well done, John. Like you'd
knew I was
absolutely
interested.
done that. What happened next? Are you still in touch?
We are still in touch. Yeah.
And?
Comes to find out, we ended up going on a couple more dates.
Beautiful.
Fell in love, got married, 4 kids.
And this is your wife?
Yeah. So it's my wife.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I can hold this over her forever. And I like to remind the kids too, like, your mother tried to kill me with 2nd-degree sunburns. Now,
That's amazing.
she's like, it wasn't my sunscreen.
And I guess there's no expired sun cream anywhere near your bathroom cabinets in your house
Yeah,
or anything like that.
And she has a special bottle just for me of SPF 100.
She does?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The kids, any of them have this similar skin or need?
Luckily, not nearly as bad. She has.
Okay.
She's kind of Italian, so even the kids with
gosh.
the most fair skin don't have the same
How incredible. Okay.
condition.
Well done. I think this says a lot about you. I mean, your tenacity for seeing that through, John.
Yeah.
And the fact you're married. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. And also probably good you didn't know that she'd invited 15 other people on
Yeah.
that
So
boat
like,
trip.
I was thinking about that. Sometimes, especially me as an accountant, and like I love details. So analysis paralysis is often like a struggle that I have where my strengths can become a weakness.
Yes.
Sometimes we don't need all the details because especially some of us will talk ourselves out of things, that the monkey mind.
100%. Yeah.
If I had that other detail, I would not have called her. I wouldn't have asked her out
Really?
again. Really.
If you'd have known that she'd invited those other people, you wouldn't.
Because it would have been like, I would have convinced myself she's not interested.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes. And I do know that analysis paralysis really, really well. I can do bold things, but I do love a detail.
Yeah. So details are important, but sometimes let's not let all the details talk us out of doing something that we initially thought, like, let's do this. But then we convince ourselves with the monkey mind.
Absolutely. If anybody listening to this right now is also putting their hands up, we can't see them, but they're putting their hands up going, that's also me. I didn't know I was going to ask you this question, but do you have any advice for them? Like, how on earth do you cut through that analysis paralysis, John? Like, what would you say?
I think if I think about it now, you need somebody to help you get through that. Like I would need that second voice. So like my most important confidant person in my business, we're good synergistic, like a lot of yin and yang.
Beautiful.
With our different energies and the ways we approach things. So like
Yeah.
he can come in and call me on my BS when it's like, dude, John, this is the right decision. Stop it with this, this, and this. Like, okay. And then sometimes he'll come in hot. Like, let's do this. And I'm like, well, let's just think about this real fast. This, and this. And so it's been good. You need someone who's opposite. A lot of people don't realize Walt Disney's obviously a very successful guy.
Sure.
He's since passed away, obviously.
Yes.
But he had failure after failure after failure after failure and he didn't take off until he got his brother involved. And they're
Really?
complete opposites. Walt's very
Wow.
creative. Roy he was very systematic, very operations.
Interesting.
And it didn't happen until they both started working together.
Wow, that's really interesting. And then for those people listening that are solopreneurs who don't have a team, and we're going to talk about your team because you have done extraordinary things with your business over the past, since I've known you in the last 4 years, extraordinary. And we'll get into that in a moment. But for those listening who are, I don't know, sitting at home on their own, they don't have that bouncing, team member to bounce things off or somebody else. Any advice there?
Yeah, I mean, I was a solopreneur. I remember starting my business, just me, 14 by 10 windowless office,
Wow.
oversized desk because we got it on at a great deal because no one in their right mind would buy that big of a desk with that small of a space. And for me, it was the idea of coaches, mentors, and groups with peers.
Beautiful.
So for me, even some of the things which, in hindsight, there's benefit there, but not as much as what they market. But there's like a network called BNI, Business Networking International.
Yes.
I think many states have these types of groups.
Yes.
Going there once a week to just talk to peers, and you find the ones that you acclimate to.
Sure.
But of course, coach is like, you're not alone. You might be a solopreneur in your business, but you're not alone in the world.
That's true.
Right?
That is very true.
You still, like, whoever that person is, there's someone out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that piece about getting outside our own head. I mean, I always say it's the thing inside our own head that can take us out. I mean, it just, I call it sometimes fighting internal wars of our own making.
Yeah.
And we can battle those for days.
Or years.
Or years.
Or maybe
or,
we're still battling them.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
And those moments. So to have that outside, whether it's a team member or a coach or a mentor, or simply getting in a room with other people, with peers that have a very different perspective to you and can kind of pull you out of that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So John, you're a CPA.
Yes. Don't hold it against me.
And let's just, for anybody that isn't in America, let's just give the definition of that.
Yeah. Certified public accountant.
Beautiful. Certified public accountant, but not the kind most people might picture when we say that. And that's also why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, because you are definitely not what most people would think of when they think accountant.
Sure.
For example, and I the first time I met you, you were wearing this T-shirt. So you and your team wear "The IRS sucks." So the IRS is the tax organization in the US. You wear the IRS sucks shirts at conferences.
Yeah.
Your whole brand is based on the idea, and I'm going to just quote this: "The IRS sucks at managing your money, so let us help you keep more of it." I know a while ago when we met at an event, you told me that you actually wanted to write that on the side of your building for the office.
Yeah.
Has that happened?
No, we decided maybe against that one.
Okay, that's probably wise not to publicly say that. But I love that you do say it, and that the IRS sucks is on your T-shirt. So what don't most people understand about taxes, profitability, or working with accountants, and how are you flipping the script?
Okay. I mean, those are definitely three separate questions.
Yes, I'm sure.
I think the first thing people need to realize when they're working with the IRS is that just because they have all the authority doesn't mean they have the competency. And we've run into that many, many times. They have a specific training that their agents go through. And it's usually on procedures. Very few of them actually understand the tax code, have actually read all the tax code.
Wow.
And then they send these letters to you. 90% of those letters are just like a computer read something, a computer sends you a letter.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And our experience has been, 85% of those letters are incorrect. Even though they're all asking the taxpayer to send money to the IRS.
Wow. 85%.
Yeah,
Gosh.
they're just wrong. And so that's the first thing. Like, just because they say that you owe them money, doesn't actually mean you owe them money.
Okay. That's good to know, because those letters can be really scary when they arrive.
I get a letter from the IRS. I'm like, oh no.
Uh-huh.
And
yeah.
we read
It's really official.
thousands a year.
Sure.
Yeah. If not even in this world and I get an IRS letter, I'm going to go to jail.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
It's really
Good news is they only throw you in jail if you ignore them completely or just commit fraud.
Okay, also good to know.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
like even if you get the worst letter, as long as you communicate with them, they're not going to put you in jail.
Okay.
You may owe some money or penalties. Who knows?
Sure.
And so I think it's always important to have someone who has experience review that letter with you, figure out, is there a way you can respond? Because, there's that 15% where we look at it like, you did in fact not give us all your tax documents, and you're like, oh yeah, I did make that money. Okay, well, it's not here. So you need to pay tax on it.
Got it.
So that's the first one. Like,
Yeah.
just because they have the authority, don't be afraid to push back.
Beautiful.
It's not uncommon for us when we have to protect a client to say the words, let me talk to your supervisor.
Okay.
Because usually the person we're talking to is stubborn, doesn't know enough.
This is at the IRS. So if you're calling the IRS on behalf of a client.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And let me talk to the supervisor becomes, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. So
Sure.
maybe I'll start listening to this CPA.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the first one with the IRS. What was the other?
So I know I asked you three questions in one.
Profitability?
Profitability, yes.
I think cash is king. It's the lifeblood of the business, just like our heart pumps blood. Like cash is important. Profitability, I think it's important for us to understand. Sometimes the financials, depending on how we run them. So I'm going to get geeky here, but there's two forms.
Yeah.
You can either have an accrual basis or a cash basis, and most taxpayers are cash basis, which just simply means as the money goes out financially, you count that as an expense. As the money comes in, you claim it as income.
Got it.
Accrual is saying there's fancy, weird stuff there, and unless your business gets to a certain size, you don't have to worry about it. But when you do have to worry about it, you could have financial statements, because now when I tell a client you owe me money, I have to claim that as income, even though they haven't paid me yet.
Right. Right.
And so sometimes you can have a profitability on paper, and you're like,
There's no
where's
cash
that money
in the bank.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But you might have to pay tax on it.
Because
So-
you've said it is going to be income.
Yes,
You've claimed it
based
as
on the
income.
rules.
Yeah.
They would come and find you, and So I think understanding your accounting is super important, and so even if you're a solopreneur, I think having an accountant is important. If you have a bigger company, having an internal team of at least an accountant who you can have explain to you these things, I think is super important.
Sure.
And then profitability to me comes down more to the cash flow stuff. And so we're a big proponent of the cash flow management system called Profit First. Most business owners don't take the time or want to understand budgeting, which I'm totally fine with, because the typical way people understand budgeting is very archaic. You're effectively saying, oh, what's my average expenses over the last year or 2 years? And I guess I'm going to spend that going forward.
Okay.
But like, what benefit are you going to get out of that?
Right. Yes.
We need to ask, if we're doing a true budgeting, we should actually be forecasting, right? We should be asking ourselves, well, what's new revenue streams that I want to add? And what are new expenses that I'm going to have because of that revenue stream? Are there any expenses I don't plan on having anymore? Which we should be reviewing our expenses, which we can get into if you want. But so those are all things I think that are important of profitability. And with Profit First, we're just saying, like, look, just if money comes in, not every dollar of that comes in is for you as the business owner. So let's already separate it. Let's spend it on paper first. Let's put it into different buckets. And that way, those buckets that we identify are important to you as a business. Things like profit distributions, paying yourself as an owner.
Important.
Two of the most overlooked things
by a lot
for
of
business
people.
owners,
Yes,
for sure.
True.
Paying taxes, you're going to be profitable. So you will have to pay something. With a good accountant, you can pay the least amount as possible, which is the goal, right? But you still have to pay it.
Yeah.
And then operating expenses, like there's a couple things. And so if like $100 come in, I can sit down before I actually have to pay the bills and say, well, I'm going to put $5 over here in profit distribution. I'm going to put 10 over here in owner's pay, right?
Yes.
And now I don't have to budget, because the money I'm putting into these other buckets that I've identified as important from a cash flow standpoint, I've already put it in the different buckets,
Beautiful. Yes. And I know Profit First recommends actually having different accounts for those things.
Like literally separate bank accounts.
Yes. And that, I mean, back to the IRS and tax things arriving like, oh my gosh. I remember working with somebody many years ago now who was very successful in business. And at the end of the year would get a tax bill and freak out. And I think this person wasn't alone. I think I've spoken to other business owners. And I love, we actually did set up, we met you at the time, and they set up the Profit First system in that business and literally labeled the bank account for tax the government's money.
Yeah.
And that was the only way they wouldn't spend it. And I really remember, talking to them at the end of that first year, and it was a pretty large tax bill they got, and it had been saved. It was simply, as you're talking about, okay, the money came in, and then allocating a percentage of that, knowing what the tax would be roughly. And ideally, of course, more is in that account. And at the end of the year, like, didn't actually have to pay all that because working with a great accountant like yourself, John, and your team. But you've put it aside, and the relief was
massive relief.
Incredible.
If people aren't doing this, the common response we get is like, how can I owe that much money in taxes? Let me look at it. And so like we sit down, did you make this much money? Yeah. Were these your expenses? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, this is how the math works. And this is even with the tax strategies, you still owe this. Because if you don't have that, most of the time you're figuring out how much you owe in April, which is 4 months after the year ended. And now if you don't have the money, it's like, oh crap. And so now I got to take money and save it from all these plans that I had to use that money, invest it somewhere else.
Yes.
Which puts business owners behind.
Yes.
Completely stifles momentum, right?
Yeah.
Instead,
100%.
When you guys are setting aside money, which Profit First system says like at least twice a month, right? I have some clients that were so bad at it that they set aside like once a week. Okay. And that's fine.
Okay.
Right? But if you do that, you don't feel the loss of the little bit that's going into this account, right?
That's exactly it.
You can survive without it. But when you wait the whole year and now it's like you owe chunk. 10, 5, 10, 15, more, 6 figures.
Up. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I got to come up with it all at once.
And it's huge.
Yeah. So
it's really huge.
Just to not kill your business momentum and the growth you want and your plans, set aside some money. We tell people like, look, if you read the book and you follow the system or you go through our coaching and whatever, at a minimum, if you feel overwhelmed, at least set up an account to stick some money in so that you don't end up having, like, you don't have your tax money when you need it.
Amazing. So you just mentioned a book there, John. So if people are interested in this, where do they go to find out more about the Profit First? I mean, obviously they talk to you.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about how people can contact you.
So Mike Michalowicz is the author of the original Profit First book. It's a great place to start.
Great.
But then there's been at this point 25, 30 maybe what he calls derivative books. So I personally wrote a book called Profit First for Micro Gyms. And so if you're in the fitness space or health and wellness space, my book will be more geared towards you. But there's for real estate professionals, lawn care, like there's 30.
Amazing.
Right?
Okay.
So depending on your industry, there's potentially a specific book for you. But
Great.
I'd go to Amazon and
Order
now, of
that.
course, I think my book is the best out of all of them.
Of course. And if you are in the health and fitness industry, absolutely. So let's just say the name of that one again.
So Profit First for Micro Gyms.
Profit First for Micro Gyms. Yeah. Go get that. John Briggs, Briggs. Not sponsoring this show, but definitely worth a read. And I personally recommend the Profit First system. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a total and utter game changer. John, let's talk about what you have achieved over the past 4 years. It is pretty remarkable. And so since we were sitting in the same room with each other, you've done this. In the past 4 years, you have added $24.4 million. I hope I got that number right. In revenue. And you have grown your team from 30 to 250 plus.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I mean, it's huge. So A, let's talk about that. And B, that kind of scaling and that fast often can come with chaos, stress, emotional cost. Like, how on earth did you grow that fast without burning it all down in the process?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack. Let me just say this, though. if this movie or this is also not sponsored by the movie Speed, but if you guys are familiar with the movie Speed with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, I tell people it's like we kind of decided to jump on that bus. We're the ones who turned on the bomb. We also started driving, and then of course we have to figure out how to shut off the bomb, which we don't know how to do. And we realized we took the lug nuts off the tires, but we need to keep speeding down the road in order to like avoid the chaos, but live in the chaos. Like that's what it felt like.
Wow.
For about a 2-year period.
Wow.
Now, what I think it's important to understand, how did I get there? Because it sounds remarkable. When you said that, I'm like, wow, that's really sensational, right?
I love that you were sitting there going, oh, that's
yeah, but we're in it. There's a lot of things that happened foundationally in order to for that to happen. So you and I are part of a group with Kelly Roach.
Yes.
When I first joined that group, one of the first things they had me do was create this org chart, but not the current org chart. It's the idea of what does the business look like 10x or at some future point after massive growth.
Okay.
So at that time we were like 2.7 in revenue. And I'm like, okay, well, what would we look like if we were 10 million? That seems like a big jump.
Sure.
Okay, I would need these positions. I think this is like, so you like think through it, like the whole process of what do we look like at that size? Who are the people we need at that size? So now that I have drawn that out, which look, it wasn't perfect. I didn't forecast it or predict exactly how it was going to look, but I had an idea, which is better than, I don't know who I need to hire next. You know, like
got it.
A lot of business owners feel the pain of, I'm growing. I know I need someone, but I don't know who. I don't know what they should be doing. This org chart concept of a future org chart really helped me understand that.
Really powerful. I'm also tying that back to what you were speaking about with budgeting and spending money on paper before it's actually kind of rushing down the river and going out of your business too. So you sat down and you did that exercise. And literally, 10 million, you're like, okay, great. So you've got that. What next?
Well, because I think it's also important to know, like, what I was realizing is the softwares we were using, the processes we were using at, around 3 million, that wasn't going to work at 10.
Right.
That's why you have to future cast and look at the future.
Sure.
And so with that now, all of a sudden we're growing. I'm like, okay, based on the org chart where we think we're going, what's the most ideal position we need to hire right now based on all our current pain points?
Yep.
And so it's like, that's the position we need to hire.
So you're keeping that, just the chart you've drawn out, and you're literally saying, okay, what's the next position on here? Okay.
I'm looking at it.
Got it.
Yep.
Great.
Like, okay, our current issues we're dealing with, that position would solve that. Let's hire that position.
Amazing.
And then we just kind of follow that process. But now also, because we're not thinking of ourselves as a 3 million business, we're thinking of ourselves as a $10 million business, even though we hadn't hit that yet.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so let's change our software now instead of waiting till it's going to be impossible to change or like more painful.
Sure. Yeah.
And so then those happen. So we did all that foundational work. And then because we did that work, I had an opportunity come across. One of my team members, his wife, was at an event, and she sat on the plane next to a guy who was also at the same event. And she sends me a text. I don't do sales calls anymore. I don't personally do the taxes anymore. As much as I love the game, like my focus is on developing my team, creating a good culture and work environment, those types of things. But I totally respect this lady. And so when Kat sends me a text, I'm like, okay, I'll jump on a call with this guy. Because she's like, you need to talk to this guy. I'm sitting next to him. We were at the same event, blah, blah, blah. So I call him, and this was great. The first thing he said, because again, I don't take sales calls. So there's an element of like, where's this going to go?
Sure.
And the first thing he says is like, remind me again why we're talking. I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of 50% don't even want to be on this phone call. And you don't even know why we're talking. I had thought it was because you had tax needs. Like,
sure.
But we get to talking. He personally didn't have tax needs, but he had an organization that sold tax services, and the company he was sending to was failing drastically.
Oh, wow.
So he was looking for another solution.
Wow.
Also, come to find out, he's like 30 minutes down the freeway from us.
Wow.
long story short, through different meetings at each other's places, he becomes my first partner in the business.
Oh, wow.
And then from there,
Yeah.
because they sell tax services, we were able to grow fast. I mean, they have a sales organization. They take 600 sales calls a day. Not all of them are for tax services, but
Sure.
I mean, they sell 100 to 150 new tax clients a week.
Wow.
And they had this other failed tax company that they had to figure out because it's damaging their brand. And so like we took over that operation and fixed that while gaining 150 new clients a week, which never would have happened if I didn't take the time to stabilize the foundation first and have a picture of where we're going.
Wow.
Like I cannot overstate enough that thought process and taking the time to really figure out where we're going. I never would have, like, if I hadn't done that and I said yes to this opportunity, it would have crippled our business.
Say a little bit more about that. Like, just because I think some people listening right now will really relate to that, where an opportunity, I think either you don't see the opportunity because you're just not in a place where you're able to take it on, or the opportunity's there and you're not set up to be able to take that on. And you just used the word, it would cripple the business. So just like please underline that point even more. Like,
so I've worked with like hundreds and thousands of business owners over my career.
Yeah.
And it's not just always tax consulting. Sometimes it's business consulting. And I've had clients, one client in particular comes to mind. He's like, I'm going to grow really fast. Cool. Great. What's the plan? What are you doing? His company was like, I set leads for other people.
Okay.
Right. He does the hard part of the sales and then lets the business owner who contracted him to close the deal.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm going to grow really fast. So I'm going to have X amount of calls. So I'm going to hire all these people up front so that I have the capacity.
Okay.
On one hand, it's like, okay. 3 months later, his business goes under.
Oh, wow.
Because he actually wasn't able to get the revenue in that he wanted. He hired way too many people.
Wow.
Had no systems for them to follow. And so, because we even used his service as a tax company. I'm like, yeah, let's try this out.
Okay.
Never delivered.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, if it's happening to one, it's happening to many.
Sure.
That's another rule, right? If you have one client complain about something, chances are we have many clients complaining about the same thing. So let's figure out how to fix that.
Yes.
Yeah, but no systems. So like these people, I'm like, well, how are they getting trained? No wonder you're not setting the leads and providing a bad service and can't retain your clients.
Right.
Because they don't know what to do and you're not taking the time to train them.
Okay.
So like just thinking, when it comes to growth of itself isn't always the best thing. You need to have structure and systems around it. And I get it. Marketing and sales and adding top line is so sexy.
Yes, and having a grand vision.
Yeah,
and
it's a shiny object.
We can do this.
I think I'd like to see more coaches around the system side as opposed to like the inundation of like all these ads of, I can get you 100 clients.
It's possible.
I can get you 1,000
It's
clients.
possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I remember one time, so I owned a gym for about 3 years because we worked a lot with gym owners and I wanted to understand gym owners. And one of these companies came and found us like, hey, we'll help you get 100 new clients a month.
Okay.
At the time, we had 70 members in the gym.
Wow.
And our
So
GM...
more than double. You can get that per month.
In one month. Per month.
We can get you more than double that.
And I'm like, okay, look, that's fun. That's really great. But let's look at some math here for a second. My GM coaches X amount of classes. He has to do X amount of things. So his responsibilities are already there. He does need to take sales calls. So he's the one who introduces the people and tries to sell them. He literally didn't even have the capacity to take 100 sales calls in a month.
Wow.
Like we could do like 10 to 15.
Sure.
Now, then it's like, well, if I want to grow, maybe I hire a salesperson, all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And I could have done that. But at the end of the day, the point of this story I'm trying to make is I couldn't even handled what I would have paid for it, let alone there's no way they would have delivered on that.
Right.
But even if they could have,
Yes.
we couldn't have handled it anyways. Yeah, I want to grow. I want to get this many clients. Like, how many clients can you handle? Like, how many new clients can you actually bring on a month? Well, it is a lot of work. Okay, so that's the number we should be focusing on, right? Like, what are the systems around it? And if I want to grow faster, then let's bounce up the systems first before we then just go pedal to the metal with this shiny object. It's the sexy thing.
Yes. So it's really interesting you speaking about that example with that client, and I can really feel it. And I know people listening too, and I've done it as well, which is like, oh, let's just do this. And it's like, yes. And it's like, oh shit, like what did I get into here? And then you're committed, and he'd got the salaries, or whether it's freelance or salaries, he's committed to paying those, and then that is going to weigh. He didn't have the capacity and couldn't pay them. So I know from listening to interviews you've given, John, and this idea of the org chart, this 10x, getting to 10 million, which is what you've drawn it for. You've shared that one of the shifts you made was aligning every role in the business with profitability before you filled it. Uh-huh. So not just this shiny, oh my gosh, we're going for this revenue goal. Woohoo, let's just go, 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 go. But again, and a theme from this whole conversation, really thinking it through, not as we talked about in the beginning, like, analysis paralysis and it's stopping, but actually really what is going to be workable, what's actually going to make a difference. So aligning every role in the business with profitability before filling it. And as we've talked about, many business owners skip that crucial step. So can you speak a little bit more to what that process actually looks like? Like help people listening with the practicality of what are we talking about here, and why it's so essential.
So a guy named Keith Cunningham, he says a business exists for two things, to either get clients or keep clients. And I believe that. I think when you think about it, I'm not trying to minimize anyone's mission.
Sure.
Right? I want to keep people, I want to keep money in people's pockets because the economy is better when business owners spend the money, not the government, all those things, right?
Yes.
But still, in order to fulfill your purpose, you need clients. That's true, right?
It's business.
I want to inspire people for XYZ.
Yes.
Well, you need the people.
You do need the people.
So I need to get them, and if I get them, I want to keep them.
Yes, 100%.
So I'm like, I agree with that statement 100%. Okay, so then if that's the simplicity, which I love looking at things through a simple lens.
Yeah.
So if we look at that from that standpoint, then we say, okay, well, that means every position in my company is either to get clients or keep clients.
Right, okay.
And then, okay, well, not every position is revenue facing.
Sure.
Sales guys make sense. Great. I can't, look, I'm paying you X amount. You sure better be bringing in more revenue than that. A lot of people get on board with, they're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You would never keep a sales rep around if they're costing you $100,000 and bring in $10,000 of new revenue.
Doesn't make any sense. Even if you're not an accountant, that math
and
makes
if you
no
are
sense.
doing that, look, I recommend reading a book called Crucial Conversations and letting that person leave your company.
Okay,
right?
Great.
But so there's revenue facing things, but then there's like cost saving things that others do. I mean, at this point with 250 plus team members, we have 65 admin.
Wow.
So they're client facing, but they're not revenue facing.
Okay.
And we have them because they free up time for other professionals who are revenue facing type of things, right?
Sure.
But I want to spend on paper first to know, like, how do I justify this position in the company? And it may sound cold to some people. I'm not saying don't love your team, don't care about them.
Sure.
Like culturally, it's super important. We have an environment that's accepting and that they want to come to.
Yes.
But in order to stay in business from a cash is king standpoint, you actually need more revenue coming in than what's going out.
Makes total sense.
I don't care you will not stay in business. It's a simple math problem. And so it's important then that we look at the return on investment in all of our expenses. And labor for most team with most businesses is one of the largest expenses we have. So we look at the position, say, how is this position going to help us get clients or keep clients? And it's like, oh, they're going to do these things, which frees up X amount of time for this pro. So that pro doesn't need to do that anymore. And they can spend more time doing the revenue generating stuff.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yep. Totally.
And that's across the board. Like, so however that support looks like, what is the cost savings? But knowing that before you go in is better. And if you have team members and you haven't done this yet, guess what? Nothing like the present, right?
Sure.
So go ahead and do that analysis now. And you may find you have some team members, you're like, actually, I don't know how they're helping me get clients or keep clients. And based on what I'm paying them, I don't see how they're actually saving us that on the back end. And I will add, I'm not talking about a 1-to-1 ratio. If an admin cost is $45,000 a year, if they're just saving $45,000 in other areas, or because they're saving it here, that brings in $45,000 revenue, that's actually bad for a business.
Wow.
That's not an ROI.
Yeah.
Because it's just assumed you have other hidden expenses and costs and time lost and things like that. 2x is like bare minimum. If they're not doubling what you're paying them in cost savings or revenue, that's like break even, the way we look at it.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what Kelly Roach taught us was the 4x model.
Yes.
And we try to stick to that as much as possible, where if I'm paying someone 50 grand, I'm really looking for $200,000 of revenue coming in because of that person, or $200,000 of savings of some sort.
Great.
And look, if you don't get to 4x, that's not the end. Somewhere between 2 to 4 is sustainable.
Yes.
3 is much better. Right?
Yes, definitely.
And when you get to 4, you're like, cool, we've made it. You know? I personally think sales reps need to be a much higher ratio, because they bring in the revenue, but then you have all these people who
underneath
help do the service.
Yeah, not hierarchically underneath, but actually running the thing behind the scenes.
I just thinking through that, taking the time to think through that it's going to improve anybody's business if they decide to invest that time.
Beautiful. And again, I'm going to bring back the solopreneur with or without the oversized desk. Who knows where they got that desk from in a too small room. But again, if somebody's sitting there on their own, John, right now, well, they've got a team because we're doing this exercise, as it were, or even if they're doing this on paper. Is there, in terms of a really simple starting place, because again we've talked about analysis paralysis, that beautiful part of our mind that can get into overwhelm. Where do they start with that?
So for a solopreneur, the first thing I would start with is actually doing a time tracking experience. So I'm going to sit down and what did I do? And the easiest way to do this is just do it as you do it.
Sure.
So like just get a sticky note and maybe put out, you're gonna have 7 by the end of the week, right?
Sure.
It's Monday, whatever. I did this.
So where your time is going.
You go back to if you're really good at calendaring, you can go back and look at your calendar, right?
Yeah.
So now I know where my time is going.
Okay.
Identify the ones like, oh, I could pay someone $15 an hour, $20 an hour to do that. Or that activity really drains the crap out of me. I'm not good at it. I always procrastinate it. Okay. What would it cost to have someone else do that for you? Yeah. Because then your genius can be spent on the things that move the needle more.
Yes.
And as a solopreneur, when you are able to free up your time with money, you need to use that freed up time to grow the business. Too often people will free up their time and then they just like, look, I'm a little tired, so I'm just not going to work as hard.
Sure.
Time.
Sure.
It's fun. And yes, you will get there. But in the beginning as a solopreneur, you're not there yet.
Sure.
You're going to need a little bit of team before you have that luxury.
Yes.
And so like invest that time back.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And because we've done this with so many clients and it's surprising to me how there's not really a common through line as far as, oh, everybody wastes time on this. And this is the easiest thing for you to replace. Everyone's business is different. What they're doing, the way they approach it, like there's so many elements. And so you're going to be the one who gets to discover what that lowest hanging fruit is. But whatever that is, do it. Do the work, right?
Beautiful.
Now you have a team.
Yes.
Now you're no longer a solopreneur. You freed up your
Absolutely.
time. You're going to be able to grow and expand.
Amazing. Yeah. And you just said, this is something you've been through with so many clients. I mean, is this is a conversation you have with clients when you're looking at what they're spending their money on? Is this something as a company you actually
depending on the size of the company, right? Yeah.
Beautiful.
So if they're solopreneurs, that's more of the focus.
Yeah.
If they already have team, then we go straight into like, well, let's analyze what your team's doing and the cost.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Amazing. And that, I mean, just from a personal experience, way back, like I'd started my business, but I remember really learning, this is back when I lived in the UK, that there are really different kinds of accountants. I mean, we've already said you are pretty unique, John, in how you run things. And I just love your approach. I really do. And then way back in the day for me, it was like, well, you either have the accountant that so many business owners I've met have, which is what, I don't know if this is the right term or not, but retrospective accountant. Oh, you finished your year, you owe these taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
dear.
They're very conservative, right? Like,
yes.
I tell people, sometimes you feel like your accountant's working for the government
Right.
even though you're the one paying them.
Yes, and if the tax
Yeah.
year is finished, I mean, maybe there are things we can do. We won't go into that in this conversation right now, but it's like, great. What do I do with that? So retrospective accounting. And I've definitely, when I first started my business, I had an accountant like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh. And then I discovered, and again, this, I don't know if this is a term in the industry or not, but proactive accountants, which is absolutely what I'm getting from the conversation with you here today.
Yeah.
Which is, let's look at actually what's going on in your business. Let's actually map out where you want to go in your business, and let's look at what is, I'm using the word drain, or, you know, what are the expenses? What are the places where that money is not being spent well? Let's get the system set up. So, for example, I'm using the word siphoning, you know, but the money off into the government's money account so that you're not shocked at the end of the year. You are going to owe some taxes, but let's get that clear. And then let's really maximize for you keeping that money in your pocket, because as we started this conversation, the IRS is probably not the best at managing that money.
They have not proven to be very good at it.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think if people are listening right now, and I'm sharing this from my own experience of, you know, you're maybe listening to this, or they may be listening to this conversation right now and going, hang on, I don't think my accountant is doing what John's talking about with me. I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. And that's not throwing accountants under the bus. But there are very, very different ways of approaching this and really putting you back in control as a business owner.
Something you said interesting. So I was reactive versus proactive, right? Those are kind of the ways we look at it.
Yeah.
Lots of accountants are reactive. But I will say this about proactive. Because we will get clients sometimes like, well, they'll fire us because they don't feel like we're being proactive. I'm like, you guys have no idea. We don't have crystal balls.
Sure.
And in order to have the level of like, to be truly proactive that someone's looking for, like no one wants to pay us that much money, right? We're not your internal employee when we're helping with things. So there is a line where proactive does in fact involve a communication with the client.
Right.
Right. And so like we look at it as more of let's have a partnership as opposed to putting all the expectation that somehow we magically know how much money you made, that you're looking at a different business deal, that you're looking at adding this asset, like all those things that we really don't know unless you tell us.
Absolutely.
And then we can say, okay, let's look at that. There's something, right? So signing up for a level of service where you're having ongoing communications or the ability to communicate with your accountant is super critical.
Yes.
When you want a proactive accountant, I want everyone to realize that does involve you reading their emails and communicating with them.
Yes, this is not just end of the year. Oh, look, my accountant sent me a communication. Now I'll read it. You're like, well, I did send you other communications and we could have avoided getting to this point. So who are your favorite kind of clients to work with, John?
Favorite clients?
Yes.
Oh, man. You know, I don't think I wouldn't limit it to industry. That's such a great question because I love most of the clients. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the ones that I don't love are the ones where it's like completely unrealistic expectations. Like, oh, you know, here's $200 a month. And how come you didn't pick up my phone at 2:00 in the morning when I called you? You know, like you haven't responded to me and it's been 30 minutes since I've sent you that email. Like, I think just someone who understands like, you know, I'm paying them for a service. I value their time, so I'm not going to nickel and dime them.
Sure.
And they appreciate the value we're creating for them. But really just they read our emails. It's amazing. Like, although the bar's actually pretty low.
Okay.
Read our emails, reply to us. Let's have a dialogue. Those are our favorite clients.
Beautiful.
Like, let's have that conversation.
Yeah, it doesn't just get buried in a whole load of email. It's funny, earlier you were speaking about, you know, find clients. How did you put it? Or keep
Get clients.
Get clients or keep clients. And it reminded me years and years and years ago, I used to support business owners help with their inboxes, their email inboxes. So talking about emails maybe getting buried or not being responded to. And I had a program I created and sold called the Inbox Revolution.
Okay.
And it was so incredible. When I spoke to business owners, so often they would say, I just want to get to a place where I have no emails in my inbox. And I'd usually leave it land a beat. And you know, if you have no emails in your inbox, you probably don't have a business, which is kind of like you're saying. It's like you have to, the clients you said earlier, you know, you clients and you've got a business that's growing. So yeah, but not loving clients that don't respond to those emails.
I mean, we do our best to like we have newsletters. We're sending out stuff with the intention, like trigger something for you. Like, oh, I should talk to them about that. I didn't know I could talk to them about that. Maybe like we're trying to be proactive in that regard, but at the end of the day, they got to read the emails in order for them to tell us the things that there's no way for us to know unless they tell us.
Yeah, so it's really a dialogue and it's really a relationship.
It is a relationship.
And you're there to support
We don't
them.
want to be the transaction stuff. Like H&R Block can do that all day long. It's fine. We want a relationship with our clients.
Beautiful. Okay, so accounting talk, but no fluff. No fluff here. So we talked earlier, the tagline, the IRS suck at managing your money, so let us help you keep more of it. So what is the biggest mistake, John, that small business owners or medium-sized, large business owners make with their taxes? Might be a really big ask. And what's one thing they can do to start fixing that this quarter?
Okay. Really big mistake is that they let themselves become so busy that they never even take the time to figure out if there's any strategies that they should be implementing. Right? They just go from fire to fire.
Right.
And that's just more of a foundational issue of, hey, congratulations, you're on the path to burnout. And unless you fix it, you will burn out at some point. And when it happens, your business is going to close. And that passion you have and the light is going to be snuffed out. So let's stop killing ourselves to the place of burnout. Let's have some space in our life so that we can get on the phone with a tax accountant and a strategist, right? That's the first mistake. I would say then from there, if you take the time to have a good accountant, value them. Like, how do you feel when you like, this is what I'm worth, this is my price, and someone's like, meh, I don't know, like I don't want to pay you. Like, look at your accountant should be an investment. We save our clients more in taxes than what they pay us, and if we don't, we're completely honest up front and we say, look, we're going to save you some time, but at the end of the day, like these tax strategies don't apply to you.
Okay.
Just be realistic and stop looking for like the cheapest accountant, because you're going to get what you pay for.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to something like lowest hanging fruit that anyone, solopreneur, bigger business, we are big fans of the Augusta rule. It seems to have caught on a lot more in the last 5 or so years, but we've been doing it for 2 decades. I personally have represented a client through this tax strategy with the IRS, and it passed. Like,
wow.
I have firsthand knowledge. It's not just like, in theory, this is what the law allows us to do.
Sure.
Like, proven out that the IRS couldn't do anything about it.
Tell us what it is.
They were pissed, for the record.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The auditor was like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, here's the tax code.
Wow.
No, you can't do that.
You threw the tax code at the
I'm
auditor.
Like, let me read the tax code to you. No, you can't do that. Let me talk to your supervisor. All right, let me read this tax code you're talking about,
Wow.
So the concept is this. In order to write something off, the IRS says it needs to be an ordinary or necessary expense, which is really vague words, right?
It's sure vague. Yeah.
Very, very vague.
Yeah.
And so I won't go into all the details of that whole, because it gets more complicated. But what that means is, like, if other people are doing it, chances are you're allowed to do it too. So large companies will rent convention centers and hotels to hold events.
Okay.
Well, that's an expense that the company pays.
Sure.
It's revenue to the hotel.
Yeah.
But the business is expensing that cost.
Yeah.
So that means renting a space to hold a meeting is normal.
Yes.
Which potentially means I can write that off because other business owners do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we say, all right, how can the small business owner do this themselves instead of actually going to a hotel and
spending loads of money?
We've all done events, right?
100%.
Very expensive.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you haven't done events, let me just tell you, not only do you pay for the space, which you think is what you're doing.
Very expensive. Yep.
Oh, you want food, or we require you to get food? Well, that's an extra cost. Oh, you want to use silverware to eat that food? That's a separate cost.
Yes.
Oh, you want a TV screen up? Well, that's a cost. And so are the wires to connect that into our multimedia system. Like, they nickel and dime you.
Coffee and tea at the beginning.
Down the board,
Yep.
And guess what? Your house has all of those elements.
Really, John?
Really?
Wow.
You have food in your house, you have silverware, you have televisions, like...
wow. What are you suggesting? And what is this Augusta rule, John Briggs?
So what we say is, let's have you as the owner of the business, but as a person, rent your house to the business
For
a
meeting.
monthly meeting.
Wow.
And just like a hotel would charge you, you as an individual would charge your business that.
Amazing.
Uh-huh.
Amazing.
So now the business takes an expense. But I did say hotels have to claim it as revenue. And this is why the Augusta rule is so great. Because I don't know if people know this, there's these men in the world who are obsessed with these stick and balls and a green jacket. So every year in Augusta, Georgia, this is why it's nicknamed the Augusta rule.
I've just got what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was like, what is he
I know.
talking about? Okay,
Well,
got it.
clever.
Yep.
The Masters tournament.
Okay.
Okay, it's a PGA event once a year. It's like their Super Bowl.
I'm sure everybody got this, but golf.
Golf.
Yeah. We're just in case. Yeah.
Golf. And so Augusta's a pretty small town, but like hundreds of thousands of people flock in for the Masters. So these rich owners were like, I could probably rent out my house to some of these people because they're paying 10, 15, 20 grand to watch these people play golf.
Sure.
They're probably going to want a nice place to stay.
Right. You would think. Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
So they rent out their houses, but they're like, I don't really want to claim income on these things. And it also, if people don't know this, the tax code is 80,000 pages plus because of lobbyists. Because someone paid someone to go to the government and say, here, I want some special rules.
Wow.
And they're like, okay, great. We'll
And
get
John,
those in.
you've read that in depth. Probably more than once, I'm imagining.
Probably more than anyone should.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Got it. Right.
Okay, so they have a rule that now everyone can benefit from that's been passed.
Wow.
And it's if you have a rental property and you rent it for more than 14 days, then by definition, it's a rental activity. Therefore, you have to claim rental income. But everyone overlooks what happens if you rent something for less than 14
Under
days.
14 days.
And it just so happens if I have a monthly board meeting at my house, that's 12. I'm under 14.
Wow.
I know, simple math.
Yeah, we can do that math. That's good.
So I'm under 14. Well, what does the tax code say? It doesn't. I'm not required to claim it as income.
Wow.
I'm not required to claim it as income. So while the hotel has to claim revenue, you as an individual renting your house do not.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I've got a question. Sometimes I'm sitting here and I know we're recording this right now. And it's almost like I hear a question that somebody listening to this might have. So I'm going to ask that question that I just really heard. John, how much do you charge?
For the rent?
Yes.
Yeah. So for years, we've been doing $1,250, $1,250 for the day.
Wow.
But in the last 2 years, because of inflation and lots of things, we're like, let's go back out. Excuse me. Let's go back out and get another quote.
Okay.
So there's a couple ways you can do this. You go like a Verbo website, find a similar listing that's close to your vicinity, same size. What's their nightly rent? So you could charge that. Or what we found is better, and because from an evidence standpoint, when we were audited, that we needed this.
Sure.
Let's get a quote from a hotel that's in the area.
Oh, perfect.
What happens if I rent an event and I want food, catering, silverware?
Yeah, all day meeting.
All the stuff that they're going to charge me for. What does that cost?
Yeah.
And so we did another study ourselves personally in the Utah area, and that came back like $4,000 to $6,000.
Oh, wow.
Is what a day would look like. Now, I'm not saying everyone should do $4,000 to $6,000. I think they need to that space would have fit 20 people, and my house can fit 10 or whatever.
Sure,
right?
and maybe the meetings with 2 or with 3 or.
So I personally do $3,000 a month. I felt like, well, I have evidence I could do 4 to 6, so I'll just be conservative
Sure.
and say 3. If others are like, well, I don't know, 3 sounds great, or 2 might be more realistic.
Yeah.
You just have to be able to prove, if you're audited, how you got the market value.
Okay, amazing.
Because like I've had other guys, they don't actually do 12 meetings during the year. They do one event, and they have a nice house, and they would have spent $100,000 at the hotel to hold that one event. So instead, they're like, I'm just going to charge that to myself because I know the hotel would have charged me $100,000. So the business pays them $100,000. Like, so depending on the size of your business, you might have some leeway and just be creative with it. Obviously talking to a tax accountant is going to help you have the best strategy for yourself. But even if it's just still the $1,250,
Yeah.
that's $15,000 of extra expense that you
huge.
didn't have. That's a $3,000 to $6,000 tax savings for most people.
That is huge. I think if nothing else, and there have been some real gems dropped throughout this interview, that in itself, if people didn't know about that Augusta rule before, I mean, go and do the market research.
It's the lowest hanging fruit.
It's amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So for people listening who are thinking, I need this guy in my business yesterday, where is the best place to connect with you or learn more about what you offer? And I think you have some free resources on your website currently that people can download too. So
ton of free resources. Our blog also, there's probably a blog that goes into detail of what you actually need to do to transfer money for the Augusta rule.
Oh, beautiful.
Paying kids, we are kind of just of the mindset, let's just share the strategies out there and enough people will be interested in using us, right? So check out our blog, but the website is Insights Tax, but it's to incite a riot is the word, which means to cause to action.
Oh, I love that.
But it fits our more aggressive approach.
Beautiful.
So it's INCITETAX.com. Yeah, free resources there. Contact us page as well. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us.
Beautiful.
But of course, we're on social media and all that stuff. So YouTube and LinkedIn.
And is that Insight?
At Insight Tax
at
is
Insight
usually
Tax.
our handle on all these different platforms.
Great. That is amazing, John.
Yeah.
There are so many other questions. We haven't even talked about your other book, which is a 3.3 rule. And I've got that written down here, the new workday standard of creating more by working less, a manifesto to all professionals who face burnout and overwork. So I'm going to say something I say a lot, which is ... to be continued. We might need to have you back on the sofa to have a conversation about that. But I will just say that book out loud, and we'll put all the links obviously below this interview, wherever it's airing. But the 3.3 rule, the new workday standard of creating more by working less. So a couple more, just two, wrapping up here. Is there anything you wish I'd asked you that I haven't asked you?
No, I mean, you got the 3.3 rule in there. I mean, that's my passion, right?
Wow. Look, right at the end of the conversation, we're hitting John's passion there.
I mean, look, I love keeping money in business owners' pockets. I truly believe that the economy is better when business owners have control over their money.
Yeah.
And I don't care what you think politically, you have to accept that there's fraud and waste that's happening in the government.
Sure.
Period.
Sure.
So let's use it there, right?
Yeah.
But the 3.3 rule, I've just seen too many business owners think they're starting something for the freedom they want, and they ended up giving themselves a prison much more than the freedom they were hoping.
Yeah.
And just because they're following how everyone else did it, and they don't realize there's a different way. Like the 40-hour work week, all these things, and the way we've been working doesn't actually look at the science. And that's what I do in the 3.3 rule. Because I'm like, here's the science, guys. This is how our brain works. And this is how, that means we should be approaching work. And the simplicity is you need to take intentional breaks in between periods of focus.
Wow.
Because your brain cycles that way.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you can actually go a lot longer. Not that I'm suggesting, I don't want workaholism. I think people need to have work-life harmony.
Yes.
I love it when people can spend time with loved ones. That's what part of the book is. It's like, stop being a prisoner to your business and have the freedom, actually have the freedom that you thought you were getting, which usually involves spending time outside of work.
Absolutely.
So how do you do that? And that's what the book talks about. But that...
Beautiful.
Yeah,
and we started off with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves speeding down the road in Speed, right? With the everything just, oh my God, I've got to keep going.
And I'm telling you, if we didn't live the 3.3 rule in our business, the bomb would have gone off.
Wow. Is that part of what really supported 100%. You through that massive period of growth?
The imagine of stress. We hired 187 people in a 12-month period.
Wow.
Added to our team. And that's just a 12-month period.
That's so huge.
And we blew past the 10 million. We were just 20,
Wow.
27. It's just,
wow.
It would not have happened if we didn't have a sustainable approach to how we work, because my team would have just been like, I can't, it's too much.
That's incredible. So you've heard the stories and the numbers here on this conversation with John. And now, I mean, that book, highly recommend. I highly, highly recommend that book as a read. And I almost feel like we could have a whole conversation just about that book.
Could.
And now that I know that is absolutely your passion, I do feel like ... to be continued if you'd be open in the future, perhaps,
Totally.
to coming
Yeah.
back and having another conversation. So, John, there is one question that I ask every single person that I have a conversation with on the Kate Kenny show. And it's kind of a ritual question. So I'm going to ask you that question now to end this conversation here together today. I know, like, what is the question? And I will say some people close their eyes when I ask this question. You don't have to at all. Do whatever feels comfortable for you. And some people, when I've asked it, then say, oh, could you repeat that? So however it lands for you, just go with that. Okay. So you ready? Dun, 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 dun. We're back to movies now. Look, suspense is building. Okay. So, John Briggs, when everything else falls away, expectations, fear, resistance, what does your soul whisper is next?
Yeah, repeat it again.
Yeah. Sure. So when everything else falls away, expectations, fear, resistance, what does your soul whisper is next?
I mean, the first thing it whispers is good job.
Amazing. Yeah.
Like, you weren't perfect, but you tried. Like, you tried your best.
So beautiful.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
I think what's next? Serve.
Wow.
I think at the end of the day, when you think about businesses, for example, especially the ones who have passion and change lives, like, I understand there's a profit component. We talked about that. You can't be in business without it. But like, at the end of the day, you're serving, which is actually one of the reasons why most people struggle sometimes. Like, I don't want to stop serving.
Yes.
Sometimes if you don't have the profit, you're going to end up stop serving.
Yeah.
And I think what's next, if all the resistance and those things pass and there's nothing like what's next, I think you just, where's the next place that I'm needed, that I can serve and make an impact? I really like a story that I've heard a few times, and it's, I don't know, I share with my team. They're like, I've never heard that before. There's a little kid on a sandy shore, and there's a bunch of starfish. The tide has washed them up, and a curmudgeon individual comes up to him and said, "Kid, what are you doing?" As he's picking up a starfish and throwing it in. Like, there's 10,000 starfish here. Like, you're not gonna make a dent, kid. Like, give up. It's too much work. And he's like, the curmudgeon asked, I don't even, like, how do you even think you're gonna make a difference? He picks one up, throws it into the ocean, and says, I made a difference for that one.
Oh, wow.
And so where's the next place we can serve?
John, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if you're listening to this podcast right now and not watching it on video, the film, what you won't see is that as John answered that question, there are tears in your eyes. And I really deeply feel that answer. Thank you for sharing that story too. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And I look forward to the next conversation. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. I am so grateful we got to spend this time together. To instantly know about new episodes dropping, be sure to subscribe to The Kate Kenny Show, #Unfiltered, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you enjoyed this episode, do please leave a review, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts. This will help more people access what's shared here. If you really loved this episode, take a screenshot on your phone and share it on social media. Tag me at @TheKateKenny and I'll be sure to reshare your post. Remember, when you dare to go unfiltered, everything changes. Thanks again for listening. Keep shining that bright light of yours into the world, and I'll see you next time.